Hello there, and a very warm, very quiet welcome to the Midnight Scientists. I am so glad that our paths have crossed here in this peaceful space, in this moment suspended between the day that was and the night that is to come. If you have found your way to this gentle corner of the world, chances are you are seeking a quiet refuge. Perhaps you are snuggled deep under a blanket, feeling the comforting weight of it settle around you, looking to relax, to drift off, or to simply let your mind wander through some quiet wonder. If so, you are in exactly the right place. Wherever you are, whatever kind of day you have had, I invite you now to let it all go. Allow the weight of your body to sink a little deeper into the surface beneath you. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your own breath, a quiet, steady rhythm that has been with you all along. Tonight, we are going to embark on a slow and curious exploration, a gentle wandering through the world's strangest life forms. We will visit the hidden corners of the tree of life, meeting the creatures, the plants, and the microscopic oddities that seem to push the very definition of what life can be. From the impossible resilience of sea cucumbers that breathe through their backsides, to the quiet magic of plants that seem to come back from the dead, we will find that nature has a wonderfully, beautifully weird imagination, and we are going to explore it slowly, gently, one strange and wondrous organism at a time. Now, I must offer a small and gentle warning. It is my sincerest hope that this journey does not keep you awake from sheer fascination, but if it does, well, at least you will have something impressively strange and wonderful to tell your friends about at breakfast. Before we dive into the deep, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from tonight and what time it is there. If you feel like sharing, you can drop your city and your local time in the comments. It is always such a joy to imagine people from all around the world winding down together in this shared stillness. And if this kind of gentle, curious science helps you to relax, I would be ever so grateful if you would tap the like button and perhaps even subscribe. It is a small gesture that helps this little channel reach more sleepy explorers just like you, and it truly means the world. Now then, are the lights dimmed? Are the blankets pulled up just so? Is your mind in that cozy, comfortable, pre-dream state? Good. Let us begin our wander through the strange side of life together. Now, let us begin. Chapter 1. The Indestructible Ones, Extremophiles. If life on Earth were a grand cosmic game, there is a group of organisms that will be playing on the highest difficulty setting, playing on hard mode, with their eyes closed, underwater, and probably on fire. These are the extremophiles, the lovers of the extreme. These are the organisms that seem to laugh in the face of boiling acid, that consider lethal doses of nuclear radiation to be a light breeze, and who calls salt-saturated lakes and deep-sea volcanic vents their cozy homes. While we humans might panic when our phone gets a little damp, these incredible life forms are actively thriving in conditions that we, for centuries, believed were completely and utterly uninhabitable. Let's start with a classic crowd favorite, a creature that has become the poster child for resilience, the tardigrade. It is also known by its far more delightful nickname, the water bear. Picture in your mind a chubby, microscopic caterpillar crossed with a gummy bear that has 8 pudgy legs ending in tiny claws. They are incredibly small, usually less than a millimeter long, and they can be found almost everywhere on Earth, from the highest mountains to the deepest seas, and likely in the damp moss in your own backyard. And yet, despite their tiny size and unassuming appearance, they are among the most indestructible creatures ever discovered. Scientists, in their endless curiosity, have subjected these little water bears to a truly astonishing list of abuses. They have been boiled in water and frozen to temperatures near absolute zero. They have been zapped with levels of radiation 1,000 times higher than what would be lethal for a human. They have been completely dehydrated for decades, and they have even been sent, unprotected, into the cold, harsh vacuum of outer space. And they just keep going. How do they possibly do it? Tardigrades possess a remarkable superpower, an ability to enter a state of suspended animation called cryptobiosis. When conditions become unbearable, the tardigrade doesn't fight, it surrenders. It curls up into a tiny, desiccated ball called a ton. Retracting its head and legs, it expels nearly all of the water from its body and shuts down almost all of its biological processes. Its metabolism drops to less than 0.01% of its normal rate. In this state, it is more like a piece of glass than a living creature, and it can survive almost anything. Then, when conditions improve, when water returns, it rehydrates, unfurls, and springs back to life, sometimes in a matter of minutes, as if nothing at all has happened. It is like being able to survive the apocalypse by taking a really, really good nap. But the tardigrades are just the beginning. Extremophiles come in many wondrous shapes and survival styles. Let us consider the thermophiles. These are the heat lovers, microbes that do not just tolerate scorching temperatures, they absolutely require them to function. Some species thrive in water that is well over 90 degrees Celsius or 194 degrees Fahrenheit. You can find them in the bubbling, steaming hot springs of Yellowstone National Park or clustered around the deep-sea hydrothermal vents where superheated water erupts from the ocean floor. Their proteins and cellular structures are specially adapted with extra chemical bonds that hold them together, preventing them from falling apart at temperatures that would instantly cook an egg or sterilize your kitchen counter. And what is particularly fascinating is that the enzymes from these heat-loving organisms have become essential tools in modern biotechnology. One such enzyme, called Taq polymerase, comes from a thermophile named Thermus aquaticus. This enzyme plays a critical role in a process called PCR, or polymerase chain reaction, a method used in labs all over the world to amplify tiny amounts of DNA. Without the quiet work of these ancient thermophiles, modern genetics would be a great deal slower and far more difficult. Now let's talk about their salty cousins, the halophiles. These are the organisms that adore salt. Not just a pinch here and there, but salt concentrations so incredibly high that they would dehydrate and kill most other life forms. Halophiles are often found in salt flats, in hypersaline lakes like the Dead Sea, and even deep within ancient salt mines. They have turned the art of survival in extreme salinity into a masterpiece. Rather than fighting the salt, they embrace it. Their cellular machinery is finely tuned to function in these intensely salty environments, using specialized proteins and clever internal pumps to balance the flow of water and maintain their cellular integrity. Interestingly, some halophiles produce vibrant, beautiful pigments that give these great salt ponds their brilliant pink, orange, or red hues. This isn't just for looks. These pigments, called carotenoids, act as a natural sunscreen, protecting the cells from the intense sunlight and UV radiation found in these exposed environments. So, in a way, these tiny, salt-loving microbes are quite literally painting the landscape with the colors of survival. Then there are the acidophiles, which thrive in extremely acidic environments. Think of pH levels as low as 0. That is comparable to the corrosive acidity of battery acid. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the alkalophiles, who flourish in highly basic environments, like soda lakes, where the pH can be as high as 11. One of the most incredible things about extremophiles is how they have completely reshaped our understanding of where life can exist. For centuries, we believed that life required a Goldilocks zone, moderate temperatures, a neutral pH, and plenty of liquid water. But extremophiles have revealed that life is far more versatile, far more creative, and far more stubborn than we ever imagined. Their incredible resilience has enormous implications for science. Astrobiologists now study extremophiles to speculate on what life might look like beyond our own planet. If bacteria can survive deep within Antarctica's subglacial lakes or inside rocks in the bone-dry Atacama Desert, then maybe, just maybe, something could be alive on Mars or within the icy subsurface oceans of Jupiter's moon, Europa. Extremophiles offer us a quiet but powerful reminder that life is not fragile. It is endlessly, wonderfully inventive. And it's not just about surviving either. Many of these organisms do not just endure their harsh environments, they thrive in them. Their metabolisms are perfectly adapted not just to cope, but to flourish under extreme pressure, heat, cold, radiation, and chemical conditions. Perhaps most humbling of all is that many of these organisms are ancient. Extremophiles are thought to resemble some of the very earliest forms of life on Earth. When our planet was young, hot, and chaotic, with no breathable air and constant volcanic activity, it may have looked more like a science fiction movie than the gentle blue and green planet we know today. And yet, even then, life was already getting comfortable in the chaos. So, the next time you find yourself complaining about the weather or struggling to get through a shower that's a little too hot, just remember there are microbes out there right now, lounging comfortably in boiling acid and enjoying every single moment of it. They're a testament to life's stubborn, beautiful refusal to give up, no matter how harsh the conditions may be. Chapter 2: The Frog with Bone Claws. Imagine for a moment being so committed to the art of self-defense that you would willingly break your own bones to grow weapons. That, in essence, is the life of the hairy frog. Its scientific name is Trichobatrachus robustus, an amphibian that sounds as though it has wandered straight out of a comic book. Found in the dense, damp, fast-flowing rivers of the rainforests in Central Africa, this frog is not just strange, it is downright theatrical in its survival strategies. Let's begin with its most dramatic and startling feature. When it feels threatened, the male hairy frog has the ability to intentionally snap the bones in its toes. These sharp, broken bone fragments then pierce through the skin of its toe pads, emerging to form sharp, cat-like claws. Yes, you heard that correctly. These are not keratin claws like you would see on a cat or a badger, which grow from the skin. These are literal bones being broken on purpose and shoved outward to form a set of bony spikes. It is like Wolverine if he were a very small, very surprising amphibian. The process is not yet fully understood, but researchers believe a small piece of bone at the tip of the toe is disconnected from the main bone and pushed out through the skin by the forceful contraction of a muscle. This creates a short, sharp point that can be used to slash at predators or to grapple with rival male frogs. It is not exactly a long-term defense strategy. It is costly, it is damaging, and it is likely very painful. But when you are small and soft and squishy and something is trying to eat you, desperate times call for some very creative anatomy. Even more curiously, these frogs do not seem to have a sheath or a retraction mechanism for their bone claws. Once the bone has been pushed out, it just sort of stays there until the surrounding tissues slowly regenerate and the wound heals over. Now, that ability alone would be more than enough to earn this frog a spot in the pantheon of strange survival stories. But the hairy frog is not done yet. As its name suggests, the male of this species also grows hair, or something that looks very much like it. During the breeding season, the male develops fine, hair-like structures that grow in dense patches along the sides of his body and his thighs. But these are not true hairs in the mammalian sense. They are actually what scientists call dermal papillae, long, thin, vascularized projections of skin filled with tiny blood vessels, which dramatically increase the surface area of the frog's skin. And why would it need this? For breathing. This adaptation is especially useful because the male hairy frogs spend long periods of time in the water diligently guarding their clutches of eggs. Think of it as nature's own custom scuba gear. By growing these bizarre hair-like filaments, the male frog can extract more oxygen directly from the water through its skin, allowing it to stay submerged for much longer without needing to surface for air. It is a strange and rather elegant adaptation for an amphibian playing the dedicated role of both bodyguard and babysitter, and he is a very good babysitter. Male hairy frogs are fiercely territorial and protective of their chosen egg-laying sites. This makes the bone claws all the more practical. You could almost say he's the kind of dad who brings his own weapons to a frog fight. These behaviors are part of what make the hairy frog such an evolutionary oddball. Most amphibians are more passive in their defense, relying on camouflage or poison, but the hairy frog's approach is physical, dramatic, and a bit self-sacrificial. There is something undeniably gladiatorial about snapping your own skeleton to fend off intruders. Beyond its peculiar survival quirks, this species also tells us something fascinating about evolutionary trade-offs. A creature doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be good enough to survive and reproduce. The hairy frog's claws may not be efficient in the long run, and its hairy skin might not win any beauty contests, but both of these unique traits help it to navigate the brutal realities of rainforest life. In the grand, silent theater of evolution, weirdness very often equals effectiveness. As strange as it may seem, the hairy frog fits into a larger, beautiful story about the incredible lengths to which life will go in order to adapt. Whether it is growing extra structures to breathe underwater or weaponizing its own skeleton for a fight, this little creature demonstrates that evolution doesn't always follow the neat and tidy rules we expect. Sometimes it takes a long, strange detour through the downright bizarre. And honestly, isn't that a little bit wonderful? A frog that grows fake hair and wields its own bones like daggers might sound like a monster from a bedtime story, but it is very real. And like so many of nature's oddest inventions, it works. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but well enough to keep its species going. The hairy frog is a quiet reminder that evolution doesn't prioritize comfort or elegance. It prioritizes survival, whatever the cost. And sometimes that means breaking a few bones along the way.
Chapter 3: Phantoms of the Abyss, Deep Sea Creatures. Now let us leave the humid rainforest and journey to another world entirely, a world of crushing silence, of absolute darkness, and of unimaginable pressure. The deep sea is like Earth's final hidden frontier, a place so alien and inaccessible that it often feels more like science fiction than marine biology. No sunlight ever reaches its cold, pitch-black depths. The pressure here can be hundreds, even thousands of times greater than at the surface, an equivalent weight of having 50 jumbo jets stacked on your thumbnail. The temperatures hover just above freezing, and the food supply is not a buffet, but rather a slow, sparse trickle of organic matter, known as marine snow, drifting down from the sunlit world far, far above. And yet, even in this seemingly hostile and empty environment, life thrives in some of the most bizarre and wonderful forms imaginable. Let us begin with one of the deep sea's most infamous and iconic residents, the anglerfish. This creature has earned its place in the spotlight thanks to its unsettling appearance and a reproductive strategy that is equal parts fascinating and mildly horrifying. The classic image is of the female anglerfish. She is often a globular, strange-looking fish with a massive mouth filled with long, needle-sharp, inward-pointing teeth. And, of course, there is her most famous feature, a glowing lure that protrudes from her forehead like a strange, fleshy fishing rod. That glowing tip is a piece of modified dorsal spine, and inside its bulbous end, a colony of symbiotic bioluminescent bacteria produces a steady, ghostly light. That light is not just for show. In the dark, silent emptiness of the deep ocean, it is a potent and deadly weapon. Small fish and invertebrates, drawn irresistibly to the curious, flickering glow, swim closer to investigate, until it is far too late. The anglerfish's jaws are huge and hinged, capable of snapping shut with incredible speed, and its stomach is so elastic that it can accommodate prey nearly as large as itself. It is the ultimate form of ambush predation in a place where meals are rare and precious. Now, here is where the story gets even stranger. In many anglerfish species, the males are tiny, pathetic-looking creatures, sometimes just a fraction of the female size. Their entire adult life revolves around one single, all-consuming purpose: to find a female and fuse with her. Literally. When a male, guided by scent, finds a female, he bites into her body. He then releases enzymes that dissolve his own mouth and the surrounding tissue, fusing his face to her skin and connecting his bloodstream to hers. Over time, he atrophies, becoming little more than a pair of gonads hanging off her side, a permanent, parasitic partner ready to provide sperm whenever she is ready to spawn. Romantic? Maybe not. Evolutionarily effective in the vast darkness? Absolutely. Moving on through the eternal gloom, we might come across another standout character, the gulper eel. Also known as the pelican eel, this deep-sea dweller looks like it was designed by a surrealist painter. Its head and jaws make up nearly a third of its entire body length, and its gaping mouth can balloon wide enough to engulf prey much larger than itself. It looks perpetually surprised, as if it has just remembered it left the stove on 1,000 miles away. Despite its terrifying appearance, the gulper eel is not much of a hunter. It uses its absurdly large mouth more like a soft, drifting net, sweeping up shrimp, squid, and other small sea creatures. What it lacks in speed or agility, it makes up for in its ability to gulp down a large meal in one go, a very helpful trait in a world where food can be few and far between. And then there is the blobfish. The poor, misunderstood blobfish, once voted the world's ugliest animal in a tongue-in-cheek poll, it is often unfairly judged. The common images of the blobfish, looking like a melted, gelatinous, sad-faced puddle, are usually taken out of context. In its natural habitat, about 800 to 1,000 meters below the surface, the blobfish looks fairly unremarkable, perhaps even a little charming in its own squishy, stoic way. What makes it look so blobby at the surface is the crushing change in pressure. Its body has very little muscle, and its gelatinous flesh is slightly less dense than water. This clever adaptation allows it to float just above the seafloor without wasting any energy on swimming. It does not chase its prey. It just drifts peacefully near the bottom and eats whatever edible bits float into its mouth. When you live in a place where conserving every last calorie is everything, being a passive floating mouth is not laziness, it's peak efficiency. This minimalist approach to life is common among deep sea animals. Muscles, speed, and intelligence are biologically expensive. They require a lot of energy and resources. But down in the abyss, where a meal might not appear for days or even weeks, it is far more advantageous to be slow, soft, and subtle. It's a quiet life, but it works. The deep sea is a realm of extremes, and its residents have met the challenge with wild, inventive, and beautiful adaptations. Big jaws, glowing lures, fused partners, ballooning mouths, and gooey bodies might sound absurd to us, but in the context of deep sea survival, they are remarkably well tuned. It's easy to think of these creatures as grotesque or bizarre, but they're also elegant solutions to incredibly difficult problems. In a place where light never shines and resources are few, every single quirk is a survival tool. Each weird shape and ghostly glowing organ is a quiet success story, a testament to life's ability to adapt not just in spite of adversity, but because of it. And in that quiet, cold, and crushing world, far beneath the waves, that kind of creativity is what keeps life going.
Chapter 4: The Living Glass Cathedral. Beneath the crushing, silent weight of the deep sea, in the still, cold waters far, far below where the last remnants of sunlight fade into an eternal twilight, there grows one of the most delicate and ethereal structures in the entire natural world. At first glance, it looks more like a work of abstract art than a living creature. A lacy, glassy, woven tower that seems far too fragile to exist in the immense pressure of the ocean floor. But this is not a sculpture. It is a sponge. And not just any sponge, but the Venus's flower basket, a type of deep-sea glass sponge with a skeleton made almost entirely of pure silica. Yes, the very same base material found in glass and grains of sand. Its scientific name is Euplectella aspergillum, and it is one of nature's finest and most surprising examples of profound elegance born from utter stillness. This sponge does not swim or crawl or chase its prey. It simply anchors its delicate form to the soft sediment of the seafloor and lets the ocean do all the work. Its body is built like a graceful, hollow tube, a cylinder woven from an intricate lattice of glassy spicules. The sponge uses this beautiful, mesh-like structure to gently filter tiny particles of food from the water, mostly microscopic plankton and the gentle rain of organic detritus drifting by in the slow currents. Its skeleton is not just beautiful, it is an absolute engineering marvel. The glassy lattice is both incredibly strong and surprisingly flexible, able to withstand the intense, constant pressure of the deep ocean without cracking or shattering. Engineers and material scientists have studied its structure with a sense of awe, noting that its unique, layered checkerboard-like design distributes stress in ways that actively prevent fractures from spreading. In fact, the architectural design of the glass sponge has inspired research into more durable and lightweight building materials for skyscrapers and bridges. Not bad for a simple creature that does not possess a single nerve or muscle cell. What is most surprising is how this structure manages to be so strong. Most glass, as we know it, is brittle and easily shattered, but the sponge's version is reinforced by its layered composite construction. The spicules, tiny needle-like rods of silica, are bundled together in crisscrossing patterns, forming a type of natural fiber composite that has more in common with modern fiberglass than it does with a simple window pane. And here is where the story of this quiet creature takes an even more impressive turn. Those same silica spicules that form its skeleton can also transmit light. In other words, they work a bit like tiny, natural fiber optic cables. When light from other bioluminescent creatures happens to strike the sponge's surface, some of that light is captured and travels through the spicules, bouncing along their length just as light does in a man-made fiber optic line. Researchers have found that the sponge's spicules can carry this light with remarkable clarity, suggesting that the entire skeleton can act as a single integrated optical system. There are a few ideas as to why the sponge might need this gentle internal lighting system. One theory is that the faint glow could help to attract symbiotic creatures, including the small shrimp and other organisms that often take shelter inside the sponge's hollow, protected body. Speaking of shrimp, the Venus's flower basket has another strange and deeply poetic feature. It often hosts a bonded male and female pair of small shrimp. These shrimp enter the sponge when they are very young and very small. As they grow inside its glassy walls, they become too large to ever escape through the narrow openings in the sponge's lattice, effectively sealing themselves inside for life. The pair lives out their entire existence within their elegant glass home, feeding on whatever the sponge filters in, safe from the dangers of the open ocean. In parts of Japan, dried specimens of these sponges, with their permanent residents still inside, are traditionally given as wedding gifts, a beautiful, poignant symbol of an enduring, lifelong commitment, a promise of "till death do us part." It's a little romantic, a little claustrophobic, and very, very deep sea. Despite its stationary and silent nature, the glass sponge plays a surprisingly important role in its ecosystem. By filtering vast quantities of water, it helps to clean and circulate nutrients throughout the deep sea. It also provides a vital habitat and shelter for countless small organisms, acting as a sort of bustling undersea apartment complex. Some species of glass sponges can live for incredibly long periods. Estimates from their slow growth rates suggest lifespans of several centuries, with certain individual sponges believed to be over 10,000 years old. That would make them among the longest living animals on Earth. They sit in silent patience, rowing slowly in the cold, dark water like quiet sentinels of the deep. There is something almost meditative about the existence of the glass sponge. It does everything quietly. It grows, it filters, it glows, all without fanfare. And yet, it has managed to inspire scientists, engineers, poets, and newlyweds alike. In a world that so often celebrates speed and aggression, the glass sponge reminds us that true beauty can come from stillness, and profound strength can come from structure rather than from muscle. It is living proof that even in the coldest, darkest, most crushing corners of our planet, life finds a way to be not just functional, but exquisitely, breathtakingly beautiful.
Chapter 5: The Art of Self-Evisceration. If you ever find yourself feeling like you are having a particularly dramatic day, just take a moment to remember the sea cucumber. This is a creature that escapes from danger by, quite literally, vomiting out its own internal organs. Not metaphorically. It actually launches its guts like a strange biological confetti cannon, leaving its predators confused and, hopefully, too grossed out to continue the attack. Then, over the following weeks, the sea cucumber simply regrows whatever it just jettisoned. Crisis managed, organs replaced, back to business as usual. Sea cucumbers are members of the echinoderm family, which makes them distant, squishy relatives of sea stars and sea urchins. They look more like soft, slow-moving sausages than anything remotely threatening, which makes their defensive strategy all the more surprising. Most species live on the sea floor, from shallow, sunlit coral reefs to the deepest, darkest trenches of the ocean, slowly sifting through sand or catching particles drifting by. Now, let us return to that dramatic escape mechanism known as evisceration. When a sea cucumber is seriously threatened by a predator, say a fish, a crab, or a sea star, it can contract its body muscles with surprising force and eject a large portion of its internal organs through its rear end. The ejected parts often include sections of its respiratory trees, parts of its intestines, and, in some species, a mass of long, sticky, toxic threads called Cuvierian tubules. These threads can instantly entangle or distract a predator long enough for the sea cucumber to slowly, very slowly make its exit. It is like pulling the fire alarm in your own stomach and then sneaking away while everyone else is too busy dealing with the messy panic. As strange as this sounds, it is incredibly effective. Many predators are taken aback by this sudden, messy defense. And because the sea cucumber does not rely on fast movement or aggressive attacks, this bizarre strategy offers a valuable window of escape and the slow-motion world of life on the sea floor. But the real magic is what happens afterward. The sea cucumber does not just shuffle off into a gutless, miserable existence. Over the course of several days or weeks, it completely regenerates all of the lost organs from just a few remaining tissues. This regenerative ability is so advanced that scientists have studied it as a potential model for human tissue repair. Imagine being able to lose a part of your digestive system and then calmly regrow it, like replacing a worn-out appliance in your kitchen. Speaking of respiratory trees, here is another wonderfully strange detail. Sea cucumbers breathe through their behinds. That is not a figure of speech. They use a pair of branching internal structures, these respiratory trees, which are connected to their cloaca, the common exit cavity for waste. Water is drawn in through this opening, passed over the respiratory trees for gas exchange, and then expelled. Despite their soft and slow nature, sea cucumbers are vital to the health of ocean ecosystems. They are the quiet gardeners of the seabed. As they feed, they ingest sand and detritus, digest the organic material, and excrete clean sediment. They are constantly tilling and oxygenating the sea floor, recycling nutrients and supporting other marine life. In many tropical ecosystems, a significant portion of the clean, white sand you feel between your toes has likely passed through a sea cucumber first. And yet, for all their ecological importance, sea cucumbers remain one of the most underappreciated groups in the animal kingdom. They are soft, they are slow, and they are often overlooked until you learn that they are essentially ejectable, regenerating, sand-filtering, butt-breathing wonders. Their entire biology feels like a gentle challenge to our expectations of what life should be. Who says you need to run from danger when you can just throw your own stomach at the problem? Who says lungs need to be in the chest when they work just fine near the exit? The sea cucumber is a quiet custodian of the ocean floor, doing vital work without ever asking for recognition. And in the world of biology, that kind of quiet, effective weirdness is often the highest form of praise. Chapter 6: The Theatrical Shapeshifter. In the warm, murky, sediment-rich waters of Southeast Asia, there lives a creature with the soft, boneless body of an octopus and the raw talent of a world-class stage actor. Meet the mimic octopus, a soft-bodied shapeshifter that does not just blend into its environment, it becomes other animals entirely. With a little bit of flair and some very well-practiced limb choreography, this clever cephalopod can convincingly impersonate venomous sea snakes, spiny lionfish, flatfish, and perhaps many more, all without needing so much as a costume change. Discovered by scientists only in the late 1990s,
The mimic octopus is relatively new to us, but its talents are anything but novice. Most octopuses are masters of camouflage. They can change the color, the texture, and the pattern of their skin in the blink of an eye, using thousands of specialized pigment-filled cells called chromatophores. These cells expand and contract like tiny, living paint balloons under the skin, allowing an octopus to perfectly match the appearance of coral, sand, or even the shifting, dappled light of the water around it. But the mimic octopus takes this incredible ability a giant leap further. It does not just hide, it performs. When it feels threatened, or when it is trying to sneak past a potential predator, the mimic octopus actively adopts the appearance and, crucially, the movement of more dangerous creatures in its environment. One of its most impressive and common tricks is the impersonation of a banded sea snake. By tucking 6 of its 8 arms away into a burrow or beneath its body, and stretching the other 2 out in opposite directions, it creates the perfect illusion of a long, slender body striped with bold black and white bands. It then undulates these arms, swimming with the unmistakable motion of a snake. Since sea snakes are highly venomous and not often messed with, this impersonation can be a very convincing reason for any potential threats to back off immediately. It can also transform itself into a lionfish. It does this by spreading all of its arms wide and rippling them, making them look like the long, spiny, venomous fins of this famously well-defended predator. The motion, combined with the contrasting stripes on its limbs, makes for a strikingly accurate and intimidating performance. Another of its go-to disguises is the humble flounder, a flatfish that hugs the ocean floor. The octopus flattens itself completely, pulls all its arms to trail behind its head, and then glides along the sand, propelling itself with jets of water, perfectly imitating the flounder's unique swimming style and flat shape. What is truly remarkable is that these impressions do not seem to be random. Observations suggest that the mimic octopus may intelligently choose its disguise based on the specific type of predator that is nearby. For example, if it is being harassed by territorial damfish, which are known to be aggressively mobbed by sea snakes, the octopus might avoid the sea snake routine and try something else instead. This implies a level of complex decision-making that goes far beyond simple instinct. It is a sign of behavioral flexibility and on-the-spot problem-solving. This kind of advanced mimicry requires a complex understanding of not only appearance, but also behavior. The mimic octopus does not just look like a lionfish, it moves like one. It does not just resemble a sea snake, it sways and flicks like one too. And what is even more impressive is that all of this happens with a body that has no bones and with a brain that is fundamentally different from our own. An octopus's body is essentially a bag of muscle and nerves, entirely boneless and endlessly flexible. It can squeeze through the tiniest of openings, and its skin can ripple, smooth out, spike up, or wrinkle, depending on what it is trying to emulate. Why go to all this trouble? In the unpredictable theater of the shallow sea, survival is all about being one step ahead, or at least one disguise ahead. The mimic octopus lives in a busy habitat, full of predators and competition, and unlike some of its cephalopod cousins, it does not rely on potent venom, powerful ink clouds, or brute force. Instead, it uses deception as its main form of defense, and its own cleverness as its best offense. The mimic octopus is a remarkable example of how evolution can shape intelligence and adaptability in the most unexpected of ways. It shows us that brains don't have to be big, and survival strategies don't have to be aggressive. Sometimes, the very best way to survive is to simply pretend to be something else entirely. It is a masterclass in the art of staying alive, performed daily on the sandy stages of the ocean floor. Chapter 7. Masters of the Niche, Blurring the Boundaries. If evolution had a costume designer, a master artist dedicated to creating the most elaborate and convincing disguises, then the leafy sea dragon would undoubtedly be its masterpiece. Floating gently in the cool, sun-dappled waters along the southern coast of Australia, this creature looks less like an animal and more like a drifting piece of kelp that has been brought to life by some quiet, oceanic magic. With its delicate, leaf-like appendages trailing behind it in the current, the leafy sea dragon is a living, breathing illusion, a poem written in camouflage, perfectly adapted to blend in with the swaying seaweed and seagrass that make up its world. At first glance, it does not even look real. With a long, thin, pipe-like snout, small, almost invisible, transparent fins, and a body draped in the most ornate, frilly, leaf-shaped fronds, the leafy sea dragon seems more like a floating art installation than a fish. But beneath this frilly, botanical camouflage is a proud member of the seahorse family, a close and flamboyant relative of both seahorses and pipefish. Despite their appearance, the sea dragon's elaborate leafy projections are not used for movement at all. They serve only one purpose: to deceive. They make the creature nearly impossible to spot when it is drifting motionless near the ocean floor. The actual work of propulsion comes from two tiny, nearly invisible fins, one along its back and one on either side of its head. These fins ripple with such speed and subtlety that they are often impossible to detect even when you are staring straight at the animal. Combined with the slow, gentle bobbing motion that perfectly mimics the rhythm of the surrounding water, the sea dragon pulls off its disguise with a quiet, theatrical perfection. It is so good at going unnoticed that it does not need speed or strength. Most predators never realize it is there to begin with. Camouflage of this quality is a form of passive defense. Rather than fleeing or fighting, the leafy sea dragon avoids trouble by simply disappearing in plain sight. And in its native habitat of cool, sheltered coastal waters, rich with waving forests of seaweed and algae, blending in is not just helpful, it is essential for survival. And like their seahorse cousins, it is the male sea dragons who carry the young. The female deposits her bright pink eggs onto a special, spongy brood patch on the underside of the male's tail. He then fertilizes them and carries them for several weeks, becoming a living, mobile nursery, protecting and oxygenating the developing eggs until they hatch. When the babies are ready, they emerge as tiny, perfectly formed, and already beautifully camouflaged miniatures of their parents, ready to drift off into the kelp forest to begin their own invisible lives. Now, on the other side of the evolutionary spectrum, we find creatures that seem determined to leave the water behind altogether. Let us meet the mudskipper, a fish that appears to have missed the memo about needing to stay submerged. Mudskippers are wonderfully strange amphibious fish that inhabit the muddy, brackish shores of tidal flats and mangrove forests throughout parts of Africa and Asia. They live their lives in the liminal space between two worlds, the world of water and the world of land. And while they still breathe through gills like any other fish, they have developed a remarkable variety of tricks to survive and even thrive when they are out of the water. One of their most entertaining features is their ability to walk. Using their muscular, modified pectoral fins like little crutches, mudskippers can scoot, wriggle, and sometimes even leap across the muddy surfaces. It is not a graceful stroll, but rather a comical yet effective shuffle. They use their fins to pull themselves forward in a series of awkward but determined hops, looking like half-determined, half-confused sausages on a mission. What is especially fascinating is how they manage to breathe on land. Mudskippers have evolved the ability to absorb oxygen directly through their moist skin and through the dense lining of their mouth and throat, much like an amphibian. But for this to work, their skin must stay wet, which is why they are usually found lounging in damp mud or taking frequent, refreshing dips in shallow pools. They also trap a bubble of water and air in their oversized gill chambers, which allows them to keep their gills wet and functioning even when they are fully exposed to the air. This amphibious lifestyle gives the mudskipper access to a whole buffet of food that other fish cannot reach: insects, small crabs, and other invertebrates scattered across the mud. It also allows them to avoid aquatic predators by simply leaving the water. If a big fish is chasing you and you can just climb out of the ocean, you've already won the game. Their behavior gets even more theatrical during the mating season. Male mudskippers will construct elaborate mud towers. Yes, actual mud towers to impress the females. They perform little dances and energetic head bobs around these structures. If a female is suitably impressed, she may join the male in his muddy, self-built bachelor pad. It's essentially real estate-driven courtship with a delightful flair for drama. Both the leafy sea dragon and the mudskipper represent fascinating endpoints on the evolutionary spectrum. One hides so perfectly that it's barely seen at all, vanishing into its background like a living whisper. The other boldly straddles the boundary between sea and land, lurching across the mudflats with a confident grin and a pocket full of air. These adaptations are the result of countless generations patiently fine-tuning survival in very specific environments. For the sea dragon, the focus is on invisibility and elegance. For the mudskipper, it's all about versatility and resourcefulness. Together, they remind us that life is far more flexible than we often give it credit for, whether by disappearing completely or by redefining what it means to be a fish. These animals have found their success by mastering their own peculiar niche. And in doing so, they show us that survival doesn't always look heroic or fast or fierce. Sometimes it's leafy and slow. Sometimes it's muddy and awkward. But it works. And in the quiet corners of tide pools and kelp forests, it works beautifully.
Chapter 8. The Botanical Underworld. Plants are often seen as passive, peaceful beings. We imagine them quietly photosynthesizing in the sun, rooted in place, minding their own botanical business. But not all plants play nice. Some are more like botanical vampires, latching onto others, draining their lifeblood, and in some cases, even manipulating their behavior. Enter the strange and silent world of parasitic plants, where deception is a primary survival strategy, and the leaves, or lack thereof, are not always what they seem. One of the most fascinating and unsettling examples is the dodder vine. At first glance, it looks like a harmless, decorative tangle of orange or yellow threads sprawled across other plants like a bowl of spaghetti gone rogue, or like spun sugar with a sinister purpose. But do not be fooled by its delicate appearance. The dodder is a parasite. It has no leaves and no chlorophyll, which means it cannot perform photosynthesis to make its own food. Instead, it must steal its nourishment from others. It wraps itself around a host plant and then drills into its tissues with specialized root-like structures called haustoria. These are like tiny biological taps that pierce the host and plug directly into its vascular system, siphoning off a steady supply of nutrients and water. Over time, a single dodder vine can completely overwhelm its host, stunting its growth, draining its resources, and sometimes killing it outright. But perhaps the most eerie part of the dodder's life cycle is how it first chooses its victims. When a dodder seed germinates in the soil, it does not immediately put down roots and settle in. Instead, the young, thread-like seedling begins to wave around in a kind of slow-motion pirouette, sniffing the air for chemical cues. Studies have shown that the dodder can detect the faint, volatile organic compounds that other plants release, their chemical perfume. It is not unlike a bloodhound following a scent trail, except this bloodhound is a plant, and it is hunting for its first meal. Once it identifies a suitable target, the dodder grows toward it with surprising precision. If it finds and attaches to a host within a few days, it latches on, begins feeding, and its connection to the ground withers away. If not, the seedling simply runs out of energy, withers, and dies. There is no backup plan. It's an all-or-nothing gamble from the moment it is born. And the daughter does not stop at mere parasitism. It also eavesdrops. Research has shown that once it is attached, the daughter can transfer not just nutrients, but genetic material and important signaling molecules between itself and its host, and even between two different host plants that it has bridged together. It acts as a kind of botanical middleman, forming a living network that allows communication, or sabotage, to occur across species. Some scientists referred to it as a plant internet, albeit one operated by a highly manipulative service provider. The daughter is not the only plant playing this dirty game. There is an entire botanical underworld of parasitism. Consider the mistletoe. Yes, the very same plant that graces our winter doorways and inspires awkward holiday kisses. It is actually a semi-parasite. While it does have its own green leaves and can photosynthesize a little, it also taps its roots into the branches of trees to steal water and mineral nutrients. What makes these parasitic plants so intriguing is how active they are, despite lacking brains or nervous systems. They sense, they respond, and they adapt in ways that feel surprisingly strategic. It's a quiet reminder that even the most seemingly tranquil landscapes can harbor complex and silent competitive dramas. There are no roaring predators or flashing claws. Here, just gentle tendrils, invisible chemical trails, and a slow, persistent hunger. And perhaps that is the most surprising thing of all. Life does not need movement or menace to be powerful. Sometimes it just needs a single vine, with good aim, and a taste for control. Chapter 9. Botanical Spectacle. Nature can be subtle, elegant, and poetic, but occasionally it decides to throw all of that out the window and go for pure, unadulterated spectacle. It creates dramas of scent and force that are impossible to ignore. Exhibit A. A flower that can reach the height of a grown human and which smells quite deliberately like rotting meat. Exhibit B. A humble fruit that ripens and then bursts with such force that it flings its seeds at speeds comparable to a professional fastball. These are not your average daisies. Let us begin with the great olfactory offender, the corpse flower. Its official name is Amorphophallus titanum, which translates wonderfully to giant misshapen phallus. This botanical behemoth is native to the dense rainforests of Sumatra and holds the impressive title of having one of the largest and certainly the smelliest flowering structures in the world. It can grow over 10 feet tall, and it only blooms once every few years, sometimes waiting for a decade or more. This makes its flowering a rare and highly anticipated event, one that botanical gardens around the world announce with the fanfare of a royal visit. But it is not the flower's impressive size that gets it all the attention. It is the smell. When the corpse flower opens, it releases a powerful, pervasive odor that has been compared to rotting flesh, spoiled fish, old garbage, and forgotten socks, all rolled into one unforgettable perfume. The stench is so strong it can be detected from dozens of feet away and has been known to clear out entire greenhouses faster than a fire drill. Why such a gruesome scent? It is all part of a brilliant and devious plan. The corpse flower relies on carrion-loving insects like flesh flies and dung beetles to pollinate it. These insects are naturally drawn to the scent of decaying animals, thinking they have found a delightful place to lay their eggs. Instead, they land on a giant, meat-scented bloom, and as they fumble around in confusion searching for the source of the smell, they unknowingly pick up or deposit pollen, allowing the flower to reproduce. And the flower does not just smell like a dead animal, it behaves like one too. During the first day of its bloom, the flower's central spike,
The spadix heats itself up to roughly human body temperature. This warming process helps to spread the scented compounds farther into the air, and it also enhances the deception by mimicking the warmth of a fresh carcass. It is a complete multi-sensory illusion, a botanical haunted house designed to trick and to trap its unwitting pollinators. Now, let us swing the spotlight to a very different kind of drama. Let us meet the scourting cucumber, known scientifically as Igbalium elaterium. This small, unassuming plant from the Mediterranean region does not look like much at first glance, but it hides a secret worthy of a cartoon chase scene. When its small, fuzzy, cucumber-like fruit ripens, it begins to build up an incredible amount of internal pressure from the accumulation of a mucilaginous fluid. At a certain point, the tension becomes too great. The fruit, often triggered by the slightest touch, detaches from its stalk with a sudden, violent burst, rocketing backward while simultaneously flinging its seeds forward in a jet of sticky goo. The seeds can be launched at speeds of up to 60 miles per hour, traveling more than 20 feet from the parent plant. It is the ultimate in passive-aggressive parenting. Out you go, and don't come back. Why go to such dramatic lengths? It's all about giving the next generation the best possible start in life. By flinging its seeds far and wide, the squirting cucumber reduces competition for precious resources like sunlight, water, and nutrients. While other plants rely on the gentle hand of the wind or the passage of an animal to carry their seeds, this one decided it was better to build its own launch system. These two plants, the corpse flower and the squirting cucumber, could not be more different in their approach. Yet they both have found wildly unconventional and theatrical ways to solve the same fundamental problem: reproduction. One draws its partners in with a seductive, if unpleasant, stench. The other flings its children out into the world with hydraulic precision. They are both a quiet reminder that the plant kingdom is full of surprises, and not everything is about calm breezes and gentle petals. Some of it is loud, smelly, and downright shocking.
Chapter 10: The Unseen Intelligence. If you were to ask someone to picture intelligence, they would probably imagine a brain, neurons firing, synapses connecting, a great gray, wrinkled organ full of thoughts, memories, and ideas. But what if you could solve complex puzzles, plan efficient routes, and even share information, all without a single brain cell to your name? Meet the slime mold, an organism that gently and quietly challenges almost everything we think we know about intelligence. Slime molds are not plants, they are not fungi, and they are not animals either. They belong to a strange and wonderful group of organisms called protists, a kind of biological catch-all category for things that do not quite fit anywhere else. The most famous among them is Physarum polycephalum, a bright yellow slime mold that often looks a bit like someone has spilled mustard on the damp floor of a forest. But do not let its simple, gooey appearance fool you. This creature is full of profound surprises. Despite having no nervous system, no brain, and no real sense of a centralized self, slime molds are capable of surprisingly sophisticated behaviors. One of the most well-known examples comes from an experiment where researchers placed oat flakes, a slime mold's favorite food, at the entrance and exit of a maze. The slime mold, starting at one end, began to explore the corridors, stretching out its single-celled body like a creeping, pulsating network of gooey tubes. Over time, it systematically retracted the parts of itself that led to dead ends, and it reinforced the paths that led toward the food. Eventually, it had formed a single, streamlined, efficient connection between the two oat flakes, having found the shortest possible path. It had, in its own slow, patient way, solved the maze.
What makes this so fascinating is that there is no central command system, no brain issuing orders. The slime mold's movement and decision-making are driven by simple local rules, by chemical signals and feedback loops. It is a perfect example of distributed intelligence. The entire organism works together to solve problems, not through thought, but through pure, elegant chemistry. And it gets even weirder. In another now famous experiment, scientists placed oat flakes on a map in a pattern that mimicked the layout of Tokyo and its surrounding satellite cities. The slime mold grew out across the map, and the network of connections it formed between the food sources was hauntingly, efficiently similar to the actual layout of the Tokyo rail system. It had created a living map that was both robust and efficient. Slime molds can also remember, in a very non-human sort of way. If they are exposed to a blast of cold, dry air at regular intervals, they will eventually learn the rhythm, slowing their movement in anticipation of the unpleasant blast, even if it no longer comes. They are not forming memories as we do, but they are recording and responding to patterns in time using the ebb and flow of their own internal chemistry. In many ways, slime molds force us to rethink what intelligence really means. We so often define it through our own human-centric traits, language, memory, emotion, reason. But the slime mold shows us that you don't need thoughts to make decisions. You don't need a brain to solve problems. Intelligence can emerge from the simplest of parts, working together in just the right way. And there is a quiet poetry to their existence. They do not rush, they do not panic. They simply adapt, reorganize, and try a different route. And in their own slow, deliberate fashion, they often find the shortest, most elegant path to their goal. In a world that so often values speed and noise, the slime mold succeeds by being slow, deliberate, and aware, without ever being conscious. A quiet lesson pulsing gently on the forest floor. Chapter 11: The Puppeteer and the Ant. In the humid green understory of tropical rainforests, a world of miniature dramas unfolds every single day. Ants march in endless, determined lines, and fungi sprout like silent, strange sculptures from every patch of decaying wood. And here, in this world, nature has cooked up something that feels less like biology and more like a quiet, chilling horror story. It is a tale of parasites and puppetry, of tiny bodies hijacked and turned into unwilling chauffeurs for a fungus with a very specific and very gruesome plan. Meet Ophiocordyceps, the infamous zombie ant fungus. This fungus does not just infect an ant. It takes over its behavior completely, directing its movements like a microscopic, unseen puppeteer until the ant ends its days clinging grimly to a leaf in just the right position for the fungus to complete its own remarkable life cycle. It is as if the parasite writes a final, tragic script, hands it to the ant, and then watches as the insect carries out its own doomed performance. The story begins with a single microscopic spore. Ophiocordyceps spores drift through the humid air or cling to the surfaces of leaves until they make contact with an unsuspecting ant, typically one of the carpenter ant species that forages along the forest floor. The spore attaches to the ant's tough exoskeleton and begins to germinate. It uses powerful enzymes to chemically drill through the ant's outer armor and infiltrate its body. Once inside, the fungus does not immediately take control. Instead, it begins to grow quietly, spreading its thread-like filaments called mycelia throughout the ant's body, absorbing nutrients but carefully avoiding the most critical organs. It needs its host to remain alive and mobile for now. Over the course of several days, as the fungus advances, it eventually reaches the ant's central nervous system. And here's where things become truly eerie. Rather than simply destroying the ant's brain, the fungus somehow manipulates it.
The exact mechanism is still a topic of intense research, but scientists believe the fungus releases a cocktail of unique chemical compounds that interfere with the ant's own neurological signaling. In effect, it hijacks the ant's instincts and rewrites its behavior. The infected ant stops its normal foraging, abandons its colony, and begins to behave erratically. It is often seen convulsing, falling from branches, and then it begins to climb. This is a highly unusual behavior for a species that normally stays close to the ground. The climb is no accident. The fungus is guiding its puppet to a location with just the right temperature, just the right humidity, and just the right exposure to light for the next stage of its life. This perfect spot is usually the underside of a leaf or a twig, about 10 inches above the forest floor. Once there, the ant performs one final macabre act. It bites down hard on a leaf vein, a death grip so powerful that its jaw muscles often lock in place, anchoring its body to the leaf even after it has died. And then, what happens next is the stuff of classic body horror. The ant dies. The fungus finally consumes it from the inside, replacing its muscle tissue with fungal filaments. Then, after a short delay, a fruiting body, a slender, alien-like stalk, begins to sprout from the back of the dead ant's head. This stalk will grow and eventually release a new generation of spores, which will rain down onto the forest floor below, where other unsuspecting ants might pass by, and the entire chilling cycle can begin all over again. Recent, more detailed studies have revealed something even stranger. The fungus does not seem to grow into the ant's brain itself. Instead, it forms a dense, three-dimensional network that surrounds the brain, invading the ant's muscles and connecting to its neurons, but leaving the brain tissue relatively untouched. It is more like a remote control system than a direct brain invasion. The ant is not being consumed mindlessly, it is being steered. It is easy to view the zongi ant fungus as something sinister or evil, but in the broader, amoral context of nature, it is simply another example of a stunningly successful survival strategy. Parasitism is everywhere in the world. What makes Ophiocordyceps so special is its breathtaking mix of biology and behavioral control, a space where the very lines between mind and body, host and invader, become beautifully, terrifyingly blurred. It reminds us that intelligence and control do not always reside in a brain. Sometimes they lurk in a patient, waiting spore.
Chapter 12: The Slug That Eats the Sun. Nature has a delightful way of confusing our expectations, especially when it chooses to blur the neat, tidy lines we draw between living things. Some creatures, as we've seen, look like rocks until they are cut, and some, it turns out, behave like plants. If nature had a list of animals that did not quite follow the rules, the green sea slug would be somewhere very near the top. This is not just a sea slug that happens to be green. This is an animal that can perform photosynthesis, the very same process that plants use to convert sunlight into energy. In other words, it is a slug that eats sunlight. And it manages this botanical feat by stealing the living machinery of algae and, even more impressively, integrating it into its own body. The result is one of the strangest and most wonderful mashups in the entire animal kingdom, part slug, part plant, and entirely weird. The creature in question is called Alicia chlorotica, a small, bright green sea slug found in the shallow salt marshes along the eastern coast of North America, from Nova Scotia down to Florida. It does not look particularly strange at first. Its body is flattened and wide, with ruffled edges, making it look very much like a small floating leaf. And this shape is no accident. It is designed to help it absorb as much sunlight as possible. Here is how its remarkable trick works. The green sea slug feeds on a very specific type of algae, but it does not just digest it in the usual way.
Instead, it performs a delicate act of biological thievery. As it sucks the contents out of the algal cells, it carefully separates out the chloroplasts, the tiny green solar-powered engines inside plant cells that are responsible for photosynthesis. It then stores these stolen chloroplasts inside the cells that line its own sprawling, complex digestive tract. This process is called kleptoplasty, from the Greek word kleptos, meaning thief. And it is as shady and as fascinating as it sounds. Amazingly, these stolen chloroplasts remain functional for weeks and sometimes for up to 9 or 10 months inside the slug. During that time, they continue to capture sunlight and produce energy, providing the slug with a living, solar-powered pantry. It is not enough to sustain the animal completely. It still needs to eat algae from time to time. But it allows the slug to survive for very long periods without food, especially when algae might be scarce. Essentially, it becomes a self-sustaining hybrid, sunbathing its way through the lean times. Now, stealing chloroplasts is impressive enough on its own, but this sea slug seems to take things a mind-boggling step further. For the chloroplasts to keep working, they need a constant supply of specific proteins to repair themselves. The chloroplasts cannot make these proteins on their own, and yet they keep working inside the slug. This led scientists to a startling discovery. There is evidence that the sea slug has actually incorporated some of the algae's genes, the very genes responsible for chloroplast maintenance, directly into its own DNA. This means it is not just housing foreign stolen parts. It appears to be producing the very proteins needed to keep them running. This kind of horizontal gene transfer, the moving of genes between completely unrelated species, is incredibly rare in complex animals. It's common in bacteria, but in a multicellular organism, it's like successfully reprogramming a car to run on parts borrowed from a toaster. It should not work, but somehow, in this humble sea slug, it does. All of this beautifully blurs the already fuzzy line between a plant and an animal. Traditionally, we like to keep these categories neat and separate. Plants stay rooted, they soak up the sun, and they produce their own food. Animals move around, they hunt, and they rely on consuming other organisms for their energy. But Elysia chlorotica dances across that line with an elegant indifference. It is not trying to be one thing or the other. It has simply found a unique niche that works, and evolution has rolled with it. It is a gentle reminder that nature doesn't care much for the neat little categories that we humans create. And there is a quiet, understated beauty to the whole process. When you look at the sea slug gliding slowly through the water, catching the sunlight like a tiny, sentient leaf with a gentle ambition, it's hard not to be charmed by its sheer ingenuity. It is a quiet, rebellious creature. It is not flashy or fast or fearsome, but it defies our expectations. It survives by bending the rules of biology, by mixing kingdoms, and by rewriting the script on what it truly means to be an animal. And there is something refreshingly humble about its method. No claws, no venom, no speed. Just a patient, ancient partnership with algae, a good sunbathing spot, and the kind of adaptation that feels more like quiet wizardry than it does like science.
Chapter 13, Nature's Gentle Light. Imagine yourself walking through a quiet forest long after the sun has set. The moon is hidden behind the clouds, and the darkness is deep and profound. And yet, as your eyes adjust, you begin to see soft, gentle glows pulsing from decaying logs and the leaf litter on the forest floor. Or picture yourself swimming in a warm, dark ocean at night. With every movement of your hands through the water, shimmering electric blue clouds erupt all around you, as if you were disturbing a galaxy of liquid stars. These gentle, magical lights are not reflections, nor are they tricks of the eye.
They are coming from the living world itself. This is the phenomenon of bioluminescence, and it is one of nature's most enchanting and poetic secrets. Bioluminescence is, quite simply, living light. It is the ability of living organisms to produce and emit their own light through a series of chemical reactions. It is found in an astonishingly beautiful range of creatures, from glowing jellyfish and deep-sea fish to fireflies, fungi, and even a few humble marine worms. What links them all is a special light-emitting molecule called luciferin. When luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase, it releases its energy not as heat, but in the form of cool, visible light. It is pure chemistry with a breathtaking flair for the dramatic. But what is truly magical is how diverse and creative the uses of this living glow are. Some creatures flash their lights to find a mate. Others light up to startle and scare away predators. A few use it as a hypnotic lure, drawing their prey straight into their mouths. And some, quite poetically, use their light to disappear entirely. Let us begin with a familiar and beloved glow, the firefly. On warm summer nights, you can see them blinking lazily through the air, sending out tiny, silent messages of light into the darkness. Each species of firefly has its own unique rhythmic blinking pattern, a kind of Morse code for romance. The males fly through the night, flashing their signature rhythm, a question whispered in light. And the females, waiting patiently in the grass below, flash back in response if they are interested. Now let us dive deep underwater, where things get even stranger and more beautiful. In the ocean, bioluminescence is everywhere. It is estimated that over 3/4 of all deep-sea organisms are bioluminescent. Down there, in the pitch-black, eternal depths, light is both incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. Some species of deep-sea squid can eject clouds of glowing ink, creating a dazzling, confusing smokescreen of light as they make their escape from a predator. Others have light-producing organs, called photophores, arranged on their undersides. They use these to produce a gentle glow that perfectly matches the faint light filtering down from the surface, a strategy called counter-illumination. This effectively erases their shadow, making them nearly invisible to anything looking up from the crushing darkness below. In this case, their light is not a signal. It is a cloak of invisibility. Bioluminescence is not limited to animals either. Fungi get in on the action too. Some species of mushrooms glow with the soft, eerie, greenish light. This glow is often called foxfire or fairy fire, has inspired myths and ghost stories for centuries. No one knows for certain why they glow, but one leading theory is that the light helps to attract nocturnal insects, which can then carry the mushroom spores to new locations. But perhaps the most breathtaking light shows on Earth are created by microscopic plankton called dinoflagellates. When the water is disturbed, these tiny creatures can light up entire coastlines with waves of electric blue. Each time a wave breaks or a dolphin swims through the water, the plankton flash in response. This can turn an ordinary night swim into something that feels like diving into a sea of liquid stars. What makes all of this so remarkable is that bioluminescence has evolved independently again and again across countless different branches of life. This suggests that the ability to produce light is such a profoundly useful skill that evolution simply could not help but invent it multiple times, each time with its own beautiful local twist. Perhaps the most magical thing about bioluminescence is that it feels so unexpected. We're used to light from the sun, the moon, and our own electric lamps. But light that comes from life itself feels like a secret that nature is whispering to us in the dark. A gentle reminder that there is always more beauty and more wonder going on than meets the eye.
Chapter 14: The Rock That Bleeds and the Tree That Walks. Nature has a delightful way of confusing our expectations, especially when it chooses to blur the very line between what is living and what is not.
Some creatures look so much like rocks that they are all but invisible until they are cut. And some plants appear to walk, not with legs, but by slowly, patiently shifting their roots through the soil like ancient botanical explorers. Let us begin with the rock that bleeds. Found clinging to the wave-battered shores of Chile and Peru, Pura chilensis is a sea creature that looks, for all intents and purposes, like a barnacle-encrusted stone. You could walk right past dozens of them on a tide-washed rock face and never once suspect that they are alive. But beneath that rugged, inanimate exterior is something far stranger. A soft-bodied, filter-feeding animal that when sliced open reveals a rich, crimson interior that looks alarmingly like raw meat. Pura is a type of tunicate, a marine invertebrate that is surprisingly more closely related to us vertebrates than you might expect. As a larva, it is a free-swimming, tadpole-like creature with a primitive spinal structure. But after a short time, it finds a suitable surface, sticks itself down, and transforms into its adult, immobile form. It is a bit like if a baby human, after crawling around for a bit, decided to settle into a nice corner of the living room and turn into a couch cushion for the rest of its life. Once it is anchored, Pura spends its days sucking in seawater, filtering out tiny food particles, and minding its own very stationary business. In Chile, this strange creature is more than just a curiosity. It is considered a local delicacy. It is harvested, sliced open, and eaten either raw or cooked. The taste is described as intensely briny and rich with iodine, a flavor that is definitely an acquired taste. Now, let us contrast that profound stillness with something that does appear to move, albeit so slowly you would need a time-lapse camera and a great deal of patience to ever notice. Meet the walking palm, Socratia exoryza. This remarkable tree grows in the tropical rainforests of Central and South America and has gained a legendary fame for its supposed ability to walk through the forest. This is not walking in any animal sense, of course. There are no feet, no striding limbs, but the tree has a unique root system that certainly resembles movement over time. At its base, the walking palm has a tall, cone-shaped spray of long, stilt-like roots that radiate outward and downward like a bundle of awkward stilts. The old and still debated theory is that this tree can slowly shift its position by growing new, long roots in one direction while allowing its older roots on the opposite side to die off. In essence, it slowly walks itself towards better sunlight or more stable ground. The image is irresistibly weird, a forest of trees slowly shuffling their way through the jungle, patiently repositioning themselves like sunbathers rearranging their lounge chairs on a beach. However, many modern scientists are not convinced. More recent studies suggest that this idea of actual movement is more myth than reality, and that the strange stilt roots are more about providing stability in the often muddy, shifting soil of the rainforest floor. But even if the tree is not truly a leafy nomad, its root system is undeniably unique and highly adaptive. These two life forms, one an animal that pretends to be a rock, and the other a plant that is rumored to move like an animal, are quiet outliers in the kingdoms to which they belong. They remind us that the neat categories we create for the world are often far too simple, and that nature's filing system is full of the most wonderful and strange crossovers.
Conclusion: the beauty of weird. We began this quiet journey with a promise to gently explore the strangest life forms on Earth, to admire their oddities, and perhaps to marvel at the unexpected ways life chooses to thrive. And now, as our exploration comes to a peaceful end, it is worth pausing for a moment to appreciate what all of these strange and wonderful creatures and plants truly represent. What first appears to us as weird or outlandish often turns out to be something much deeper, a perfect adaptation. Not the chaotic randomness of nature gone wrong, but the quiet, deliberate, patient work of evolution, shaping life to fit its surroundings,
however unusual those surroundings may be. The sea slug that harvests solar power, the parasitic vine that can smell its victims, the brainless slime mold that can navigate a maze. At first glance, they seem like curiosities, like science fiction brought to life. But behind each one is a carefully honed and brilliant strategy for survival. And isn't that, in its own way, breathtakingly beautiful? The outliers, the edge cases, the creatures that do not fit neatly into our categories, these are not accidents of nature. They are stunning examples of just how flexible, how patient, and how deeply imaginative evolution can be. The blobfish does not look like a normal fish at the surface because it does not need to. It is perfectly designed for its own world of immense pressure. The sea cucumber expels its own guts in self-defense, not because it is gross, but because in its slow, soft world, that is what survival demands. The glowing fungus, the rock that bleeds, the tree that may or may not walk, they are all part of life's endless and beautiful experiment with form and function. And through them, we get a clearer sense of biology not as a static rulebook, but as a living, breathing conversation. The strange teaches us a gentle humility. It reminds us that we are not the standard by which all life should be measured. We are simply one version of a living thing perfectly suited for our niche, just like all the others. And even without the usefulness, even without any practical benefits for us, there is a profound value in simply knowing these things exist, in knowing that somewhere in a Chilean tide pool, a sea creature that looks like a rock is quietly filtering the ocean, that on a rainforest floor, a tree's roots are repositioning themselves bit by bit in a slow-motion waltz. These stories bring a kind of quiet wonder. They slow us down. They ask us to look again. And perhaps, if you are still awake, they leave you with a deep sense of peace, a comfort in the idea that life, in all its messy, strange, and creative glory, always finds a way, even the weird way. And if sleep is now tugging gently at your thoughts, let it come. Let these strange and wonderful images settle into your mind like phosphorescent plankton glowing softly in a calm, dark water. Life is bizarre. Life is beautiful. And in all its weird, wandering forms, life goes on. Good night, fellow explorer. May your dreams be just a little stranger and a lot more wonderful.